to create an intervention in EduClimber. Here's your home screen, so you've kind of already logged in. Everybody has the same home screen. It looks very similar across the board. What you're going to do is you're going to go up here to the plus sign and you'll see create interventions. There are a couple other ways to do that as well. If you had a data wall, you could select students. There's this little box next to their name. You could select them and a blue bar will come up and say, you know, hey, do you want to create an intervention? You can click that and you can also create an intervention that way. If you did it that way, it would automatically populate with your couple of students that you selected from there. But you can do the same thing from here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click create an intervention. Your first job is to add your students. So if you had multiple schools, you'd have to select that. Okay. I added one student. You can keep adding more students. I would recommend that you add students by group. So just because you have students that you're seeing across the entire week, and let's say you're using a similar program or a similar progress monitoring tool, don't put them in the same group, do them separately. I would literally go based on, I see these 3 students at this time on Monday, every Monday at 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna put them in a group, okay? It just makes it easier as we go through the scheduling. So I'm gonna click add. Here you can select a different interventionist. I'm just going to leave it as myself. Select the level of intervention. This is more like a kid talk kind of level. This is more of our SSP intensive intervention. And then you have your specialized instruction. The skill area, this is a filtering system basically. So if I click literacy, it's only going to show me the interventions that we have in our system for literacy. If I were to click math, it would do the same thing. Behavior is just the point sheet right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click literacy. You're going to select the strategy that you're going to use. There's quite a few things in here based on the recommendations from interventionists and from special educators. So select the one. If you have an addition that you'd like to make to here, just come let me know and we can talk about that intervention and whether we can get it in the system or not. Okay, I'm going to click CKLA intervention tool. It auto-populates with a name here, but I recommend that you make it identifiable in some way, shape, or form, because if you had a lot of different intervention groups in the system, you'd want to make sure that you could easily find them and you know which ones are which. So in this case, I'm going to put 5M and I'm going to put CKLA intervention because this is the class he's in, and CKLA intervention is the intervention I'm doing. That way you could have multiple 5M groups and you could have maybe different interventions for each one of those. All right, I'm going to click add. Up here is the dates for your intervention. Usually your intervention should be scheduled in 4, 6, 8-week chunks, somewhere in there, maybe 10 weeks if it's a longer term intervention. So we're going to want to change this date here. We'll just go to December. It's on a weekly schedule now. Most of us don't have block schedules. I don't think anybody does. And then there's as needed. I'm going to go ahead and select weekly. I'm going to say that it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's important to remember which days of the week that you put here because later on when you assign a progress monitoring tool, you have to put it on one of those 3 days. You can't test on a different day that you don't see that child. So I'm going to say this is happening from 9 to 9:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's the days that you're seeing the child, the days you're administering some sort of intervention. This is where you're putting in measures. You'll notice it says measure 1, and you also have the opportunity to add a new measure. It would just say measure 1, measure 2, measure 3. So that's if you're using multiple different progress monitoring tools in one intervention group. So probably not likely, but it could be. It could be that you are administering the STAR assessment, and that comes in automatically, and you're doing a quick fluency check. I don't know. Down here are your tools. I did just mention that STAR comes in automatically. That's both the CBMs and the STAR screener. That makes it easy because you do not have to enter those scores in later. So it will automatically populate, it'll automatically go on your students' charts. Super easy. You just administer the assessment and then you kind of let it ride. If you do a different intervention tool, which again is totally fine, you just have to manually enter those scores in. So let's pick this one. Complex patterns, all consonant groups. So let's say that's what we're working on. That's the progress monitoring tool. We're going to select that we want this measure to configure a rate of improvement. So this box is really for if you had multiple measures up here, you need to pick one of them for it to calculate your rate of improvement. And I'll show you that in a little bit. It auto-populated with our dates of our intervention. I'm going to do down here, and I'm going to select the same time that I did before, 9 to 9:30. That's when my group is. Okay. How often you're doing the, this is how often you're doing the progress monitoring tool. We know you're probably seeing them every week, but maybe you want to do the progress monitoring every 2 weeks. Like if it's something like STAR, the CBMs, or the screener, you're not going to want to do that every week. That would be a lot. So maybe you're only doing it every other week or every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks or whatever it might be. So just select that there, and the day of the week that you're doing the progress monitoring, I'm going to say it's on a Friday. So in this case, I'm saying I'm doing it every week on a Friday. Your goal is important because that's, again, how it's calculating your rate of improvement toward reading your goal. So if you're not using STAR, it might be that you have a tool that you're using that's out of 10. So maybe this student scored a 5 out of 10 on their original assessment, and now you're saying that by the end of this intervention, they're going to get a 9 out of 10. Okay? Grade level is not something you need to put in. That is for if you are assessing the student outside the grade level that progress monitoring tool is for. So for example, in STAR, you can change their expected instructional level. If you change their instructional level, it changes where they start on that test, and you would want to enter that here just for your own notes. It really doesn't impact later, but when people are asking you about the progress monitoring tool, which of course everybody will, I'm just kidding, they might ask, well, are you assessing them on grade level? Well, no, we're assessing them at a second grade level or first grade level. All right, so I'm going to say that our goal is 9 out of 10. I'm going to add that measure. This review schedule, so again, it defaulted back. We want to go to the end. And we're going to say this is how often you're meeting about this student. How often are you looking at that plan and saying, I looked at my data, looked at my progress monitoring, and I'm seeing that either this intervention worked or did not work, and so I'm going to do something differently. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to do that every 6 weeks. Okay, and we're going to do it at an MTSS meeting on a Tuesday. Now, if you had a MTSS meeting structure that is already set up in this system, which I do not, that's why nothing shows up, they would show up here and you'd automatically be able to say, it would automatically assign the student, if you click the button, to that meeting in 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks, it would assign it and say, okay, don't forget to talk about this kid. So that's kind of a cool feature. Right now, I'm going to say do not assign to a meeting because I don't have any meetings set up. So I'm going to click add. This is where I can go back and I can edit anything I want to. Now you can do this at another time too. There's multiple ways that, once it's in, it's not locked in forever. You can change things. But if changing it early is better. So if you need to go back, you just click update on any of these sections and you're good to go. Click save. It created my intervention. If I were to click this, it would create a PDF of that intervention so that you could, give it to a parent or whatever you'd like. Put it in their file, things like that. Mine won't work. Actually, it'll create the intervention, but I can't open it because it puts the student's name on it. And so since I'm in top secret mode, it won't allow me to show you the name. So I'm going to say okay. So it put it in here. You can view your interventions in a couple of different ways. You can view here, view my interventions, or you can view here. Okay. I'm going to go here. It takes you to the same spot. We're going to go, I have 2 different groups right now. So I think this is the one I just created. So I'm going to select that. There's my student right there. And this is where I can kind of take a look at their progress monitoring. We don't have anything in there right now. So I'm going to actually go back here and I'm going to enter my participation. Okay, so entering participation. So you'll see right off the bat, Brittany Preston has 2 different groups that I could score on a Friday. So both groups are Monday, Wednesday, Friday actually. So they're both here. I can select an individual group and say I only want to do that group. I could select both groups. If I had 10 groups in here, they would all show up. What's really, really nice about that is that there's this feature here that's a quick enter. So if I had 10 groups in here and I know that I had perfect attendance the entire time, you just click it and I know that recommended duration means of that 30-minute group, how many minutes were they actually in the session. So I would say I'm going to do present. Yes, complete procedures for all students. I'm going to click save. It automatically populates here. Then you can go back through and say, oh, but this student, this one was absent, right? So it's got 0% here, 100% here, okay? Let's say this student was present, but only came for 25 minutes. You can change it, okay? Which is helpful. Hopefully a majority of your students showed up, so it's a quick enter. You don't have to really worry about changing anything, but if you did need to change 1 or 2 students, you can do that there. Okay. So that's done. That's all you needed to do. Not too bad. If you needed to reschedule a group, you can do that right here by clicking this. There's also another place that you can do that as well, but right here I can click reschedule a group. I can add a date for a group. So let's say you needed to reschedule because those students were on a field trip, or maybe you're like, hey, I want to give these kids an extra little dose on Thursday. You could just add a date for a group. Okay. So that's it for attendance. Not a huge deal. Again, the really important thing about attendance is because if a parent is like, hey, my kid's in intervention, they've been seeing you every single day and they're still not making progress, what's up? You can go into attendance and say, yeah, they're assigned to my group every day, but every day they have band or they have field trip or they have some other thing that interrupts them being able to attend. That would be a really good reason on why they're not making progress. All right. So the next 2 sections are entering monitoring scores or entering point scores. So point scores are for the behavior sheets, check-in, check-out sheets. I don't have any of those right now, but if you did, that's where you would enter those scores. We're going to go under monitor scores. Again, this is pretty easy. It automatically puts all of my groups on one page, but I can filter them and I can say it would list students here. So I could click a different student if I didn't want to enter progress monitoring for this student. I could pick a different one. I could pick all of them. However you want to do it. The way I see it being the most effective is if you had the same progress monitoring tool for a bunch of students, you could click on those students and it'd be much easier to just log their scores. Okay. It does go by date. So if you picked that you were doing your intervention or your progress monitoring on a Wednesday, they wouldn't show up here because this is a Friday. Okay. You can reschedule them. You can select and say this student, he was absent that day. Remember, we need to reschedule when reschedule or add a date to a different day because that's when we did the progress monitoring. So unclick. Here are your scores. It's just a double click. You enter your scores. So this student, let's say you got a 7. I already entered this one was a 6. Your errors and accuracy. So that would be, let's say you're doing a fluency check. You could say how many errors that student had, okay? So not too hard, pretty easy. You just click in it and automatically saves. There's no saving. Click X, and it's gonna automatically start your charts, okay? So if I wanted to see my charts, I wanna see what are my charts saying about how this student is doing. I'm gonna go to view my interventions, select the group. Okay, so here's my group. This student has 100% attendance so far. They're participating every single time. That's great. Their latest score was a 7. The more progress monitoring data you have in here, these things will start to populate. Other information will start to populate. You can add comments. All right. If, let's say I had a bunch of students in this group, like 4, sometimes it's neat to go to this section right here because you can see overall, how are my students doing in this group? How's their participation? Are they overall on track or not on track? How many students in each, right? You can add comments. You can make those comments private. That's really important. You can, these are some forms that are already pre-built that you could click on and decide, okay, well, how is my fidelity doing? Things along those lines. Those come off as PDFs. I have my schedule for when I'm seeing those students, which you can edit, right? And I have my student details, which is where you could also put in your exit status. So if this student is exiting this group for whatever reason, you could do that here. Okay, group overview. Again, when I click on this student, I can go into progress monitoring and it's going to give me his chart. So this is his first score, right? So it charted him at a 7, which is really great. We're very close to our goal. Our rate of improvement is right here at a 0.19. All right. As you put in scores, it's going to add a blue dot. So if his score went down, it'll go here, goes up here, and it's going to keep all the way through. Okay. You can take away your goal line if you want to. Yep, by clicking on the word, it took my goal line away, so now I can just see my dots. Put my goal line back and I can take away the dots. Okay. Down here, every time you progress monitoring, it's going to add columns and it will come up with a trend rate of improvement. It'll also come, there'll be this little button here, not button, circle that has an arrow up or down or to the side saying he stayed the same, he went up, he went down, whatever. It's just like a little flag. So lots of information there. The other thing to note is when you click these little buttons, you can add a new phase. A new phase would be like, let's say you're using Orton Gillingham, and you are moving from CVC words to VCCV, right? That might be a new phase in this. As long as you're using the same progress monitoring tool, the phase will show up as one of these black lines. So it'll show up here or here, wherever you changed the phase. You can add a student to your group. You can add a measure. Now, if you add a measure, it is going to rechart it down below this. So you'll just keep having, every new measure will have its own chart. That's where if you had multiple measures for the same group, you'd have multiple charts. Okay, you can add comments right here for this particular student. You can print your comments and you have reports for that individual student, just like what you had for the whole group. All right. New phase, new measure. Again, there's lots of different ways that you can adjust things. You can delete it here. Okay. So I think that's it for progress monitoring. I know it seems like a lot, but I think once you get into it, once you get your groups, they actually did streamline it quite a bit. So like I said, you can take attendance all at the same time. You could enter your progress monitoring all at the same time. You know, if you put that in your schedule for once a week, it should go pretty quick. Oh, the last thing I wanted to show you about this, actually, let's look at this group. So you might have noticed under progress monitoring, there's the pin here. And if you remember collections, you can pin this to a collection. So if you didn't want to have to click through all this and see how all your students are doing individually or in their groups, you can pin all of those charts to one collection. You open up your collection and now you see all of those charts in one spot. If you ever need help setting that up, I'd be happy to do that. Alrighty. So I think that's it for this. Don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'll be doing a lot of short videos like this, little refreshers. So keep an eye out for those. Thanks.